Welcome, welcome, welcome to the discussion today that we're going to have about ChatGPT, job seekers, career coaches. I'm really looking forward to getting the perspective of everyone else here. Virginia, you and I have chatted before, and I think you and I have too. This is the first time, Anna, that you and I have been on a call. Just wanted to introduce all of you to George Pace, who I did a conversation with about 2 or 3 months ago about ChatGPT. And I would love to get each of your perspectives, you, Virginia, Anna, and about what you're thinking about and what you've been testing it with.
I could
Yeah, go ahead,
start.
go ahead, Virginia. Go
Well,
ahead.
yeah. So part of it has just been playing around for fun. As I mentioned offline, I've been asking it to hold conversations with dead people that I admire, and it infers things from their writing. So that's sort of not related to job search, but interesting. But I have been using it to test out writing different kinds of cover letters and thank you letters and things like that that sort of stymie a lot of job seekers. What I found is I sort of call it garbage in, garbage out. So if I say, just write me a cover letter for this job, it's very generic. But if I say, use this resume I wrote and this job posting and write a cover letter, it's a really good starting point. I still think I haven't seen anything that doesn't need human oversight, but it's a great framework to get started. And I think for people that writing isn't their thing, or maybe English isn't their first language, I just think it's an incredible tool.
Definitely. What about you, Anna?
Yeah, I've been experimenting with it a lot as well. And I've sort of been so into it that I decided to do this video series, 30 Ways to Save Time in Your Job Search with ChatGPT. And it's been really fun. And it actually attracted way more attention than I expected because I was just having fun and exploring different things with it. Um, but yeah, I agree with Virginia that everything depends on the quality of your input. So if you put a quality piece of text or some information about the person's experience, their background, and stuff like that, and you also experiment with different prompts, you can get some very different results. And I'm very impressed with how like ChatGPT understands very subjective categories. Like I tell it, use more compelling language or make it sound less formal, or can you meet me in the middle between conversational and super formal? And it does that. Like it understands those categories, and it can make things more convenient to read or more formal, less formal. And I really like that difference of tone and that variation that you get. I think you can really play around with it, but a lot depends on the quality of the question that you ask and the quality of the information that you put in the first place.
And there's an example. Michael is using it to assist with resume writing and cover letter writing. I would be curious to know from the panel what types of things you think would be best to use for resume writing and cover letter writing. Might it be for a summary? Might it be for something else? What are some of the best practices you might recommend specifically for that?
But if I could jump in here, I love the points that both Virginia and Anna have made so far. I just want to take that point about quality of input and add the definition of it being specific. The more specific the input you give ChatGPT, the better the results will be. So if you say, oh, I want to know about being a product developer, well, product developers exist in how many industries these days? But if you want to be a product developer in wearable tech, that is a much more specific prompt to give ChatGPT, and you'll get much better results to learn about that if you give more specific details to it in terms of your questions and prompts. And I find that with cover letters, I don't know that it's necessarily about generating just a portion of it, but if it can generate the whole thing for you. And of course, the key thing is about customization after ChatGPT spits back whatever it's going to give to you. The biggest caveat I think we all want to push to all our listeners is that if you use ChatGPT, you cannot, well, you should not use it verbatim in terms of whatever you submit to the end audience at the end of the day. You should customize it as much as possible because it could be detected. It's not your true voice. And so you want to make sure that whatever content you supply sounds as true to you as possible because you're going to have to represent it later on down the line in an interview or what have you. But I think you can experiment with summaries for your resume, with your full cover letter. But as Anna and Virginia have said, the more specific information you give it your own resume, give the job description and any other input you can give to allow the system to understand the specific context you're trying to write within, then you're going to get better results that way.
So George, I'd be curious to know, this is George Pace. Can you explain a little bit about how ChatGPT works?
Boy, in a nutshell. Well, the funny part is, if we get past the quote unquote magic of the whole thing, it's actually a sophisticated look ahead engine. So much like when you go and type in Gmail and it magically tries to fill your sentence in. Well, in a sense, it's doing a lot of the same things at a different level. And one of the things I wanted to comment on I'm working on this as part of a presentation I'm giving in a couple of weeks. You really need to consider this, as strange as it may sound, as you're being introduced to a new friend. And much like this, how do you talk to a new friend? What are the expectations of what the friend knows about you? It's this new thing where I see so many people trying to rush out and ask ChatGPT a question without a purpose. And one of the things that's coming out of this is, as part of the experimentation process, understand that it has an IQ of 0. It's not, it really doesn't. I mean, yeah, it can spit back answers that it's ingested, but it's still not human. So you need to learn the language of ChatGPT. So that's I think, one of the insider secrets, as it were.
So this is an example here. I'm just saying, person is using it to practice as interviewing as an interview coach.
Right. So I'll jump in on this one, because one of the things I did very early on was if you just say, hey, give me the list of questions that are asked on a Google interview, as an example. If you look at the answers are not necessarily what I would call correct. In one instance I saw, it talked about we did this, we did this, we did this. An interviewer is not looking for we, it's looking for you. So as you look at these responses that you get, one of the things to realize is that they're serving as a guide. Do not consider this to be absolutely correct. And there's this other thing I'm working on in my presentation, which is what's good, what's accurate, what's close enough, and what's right. And depending on the question that you're answering, there's a spectrum of categories that answer could fit into.
I'd love to weigh in sort of along with what George said, but in response to the earlier comment about resume writing, I just attended the Career Thought Leader Conference, where this topic came up quite a bit, and we looked at samples of how GPT wrote a sales resume, for instance, and it did give bullets with I saved 20% doing this, and so it gave figures and numbers, but what it lacked was context, and I guess primarily it really lacked a lot of the context. So I definitely caution people to use it as prompts to sort of think through your own story. But if you just submitted something like that and maybe plugged in your numbers, your story would still be missing, and it would look like every other resume that someone has written using ChatGPT.
Yeah, I can jump in for a sec. I actually attended a networking event for the tech people here in Calgary, where I live. And there was a lot of talk about ChatGPT. And what I learned is that apparently ChatGPT doesn't know what is actually true. So that's why when you're writing a resume with ChatGPT, it'll give you like all these metrics, but most of them are made up because it doesn't actually know whether you did those things or not. So I would also caution job seekers and say that there's an ethical question here in terms of like, do you want to lie on your resume and then have to respond? Did we lose Ken, by the way?
I don't know. He was there, and then I saw he was playing with his keyboard, and then he was gone.
Well, I'll just keep talking then. Yeah, and so you do want to make sure that you're using whatever ChatGPT gives you as sort of like ideas to work with or things to think about your own experience or background, versus just taking those metrics and making them your own, or like those results and percentages and cost savings and all that stuff, because it isn't your own. So there's also that question.
Yeah, don't.
Go
ahead, Virginia.
Oh, I just saw Lori Ann Petroy's comment about the interviewing, that she said she read an article about a recruiter that got the same answer from 8 candidates because they all used ChatGPT. She said that she was not impressed, but she was concerned.
Well, yeah, and if you actually look at this, it's interesting. If you look, and I'm going to even throw Bard into this, which is Google's offering as well. If you look closely, and again, it depends on your client. I know Bing is one of them, where you'll actually see a multitude of different responses that it can generate. Remember, it took all these data points and it's basically traversing through a tree to assemble this thing. So the fact that you may get an answer A, I might get answer B, or the answers are going to change. And the problem is if you listen to the press and you listen to the what do we want to call it, the exaggerations, it's like this is the be all and end all of humanity, and it's not. We haven't even hit, for those that are familiar with Gartner stuff, we haven't even hit the trough of disillusionment yet. Like, people have not yet experienced the badness or the wrongness that's going to come out of these models. So if there's one thing you take away from today, temper your expectations as to what it can do.
It sounds like verification. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounds like verification is one of our key messages from the conversation thus far, that whatever it spits out, it may not be true, doesn't necessarily know right from wrong or true from false, as you said, George. And so really do need to keep those in mind. And from Anna's example, if you are writing a resume, maybe a better prompt is, what are some key achievements or key results that would be needed in my field, or some, we can get a better question than that, but that can give you a prompt to give you ideas about what type of achievements or results you'd want to include in your resume. And that might be a great usage of ChatGPT if you're stuck on, what do I talk about? And then from there, you can populate your own actual results, your own metrics, and your own context. As Virginia was saying, the resumes lack context, and that can be a way for you to use ChatGPT as a partner, but not as your main output source.
Hopefully everyone can hear me, and I apologize.
We see you, Shelley.
Video problems. But I wanted to piggyback on what Virginia said. We were at the same conference, and obviously that was a huge topic because a lot of the people at that conference do write resumes, and we're trying to figure out, kind of what this means. But I think the big takeaway was, when you write a resume, you really have to understand why what you did mattered, right? 20% sales increase. Well, that could be awesome. That could be average. That could be below average. So how are you talking about that with your audience who are going to care? And so while I think it can be great to prompt you to think about what might matter to an employer, the next step is explaining why it will matter. And that you probably need to add on your own.
Yeah, Shelley, the problem is there's this sexiness, there's this laziness, there's this, pick whatever your favorite word is, that this thing is automatically going to solve for those things that are uncomfortable or hard to do. And that's not true. It's easy to fall into that trap.
So I'm welcoming back. We have construction going on here, so I wanted to kind of be off the phone for a little bit, or the call here, so quiet it down. Here, did anyone see the open letter from the AI creator community asking about slowing down the AI? I'd love to get thoughts about that.
I blogged about this last night. Actually, I could put it in my I don't know if I can talk to the public chat, Ken.
You can. Well, you can follow up and comment later on but you can talk to all of us now and add comments later. Yeah.
So if you go to Keep Pace, which is my digital presence, KEEPPACE.substack.com. I just talked about this last night, and it's in theory, it's a great idea, but I break down the actual words that they used and the intent. Good luck pausing this for 6 months. That's all I'll say. Good luck.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the horse is out of the stable, or whatever that phrase is. Maybe the time to have thought through it was before the code got released. But now everyone has it, and they're off to the races applying it to their different tools.
So a question came up: is ChatGPT free, and if not, what is the cost to use it?
So you can use the free version, but then you may not get the latest model of GPT. So let's say GPT-4 I believe right now is only available to the Plus users, and you have to pay about $20 a month for that. At least that's what I'm paying. But it does give you some advantages in terms of the speed, in terms of the limits of like the amount of chats you can have with ChatGPT. And also it gives you access to GPT-4, which I found actually is a lot more, a lot cooler than the previous version. Like I can really feel the difference the more I'm experimenting with it.
So Virginia, I wanted to ask you a question, Virginia, as a resume writer, do you, or any of you, do you find this as a threat to your businesses, or do you look at it as complementary?
So, Shelley, I think you were part of this conversation. I feel like there's always a need to pull out details and context that AI couldn't figure out. And an analogy that was used is that there's software to do your taxes, right? There's TurboTax, and but people still go to accountants. There's software to help you sell your house, but people still go to realtors. So, depending on the complexity of someone's story, that that you might always need personal support.
Yeah,
I can also jump in for a sec.
Go ahead,
yeah, I write resumes as well, and I've been part of all these conversations online of like, is this a threat to the profession? Should we be considering something else? And I'm totally not on that boat. Like I'm so into embracing the new capabilities, and I think that actually equips writers with more tools and helps us be more productive, more on point. And the human factor is not going anywhere. And I find that if you also have a coaching element to what you're doing, and if you are a really good resume writer, let's face it, it's impossible to write a really good resume if you cannot walk the client through some questions that are sometimes really hard for them to answer. So if you have that element, and if you're confident in that element, I mean, come on, this is just like my life became so much better. Now I'm saving time on all the routine part of the writing, but really embracing and enjoying the human part, and can actually have more time for it. So I think that it's a big step forward.
I have to agree with that. I think resume writers, because part of that, what we add value to is understanding strategy for each individual person and for their situation. And that doesn't go away. So I think resume writers will still add all that value because they will be asking the right questions, gathering the right information, and then making sure that they're putting that in a compelling document. So they will elevate essentially what ChatGPT can do, at least for now. That may change, but at least for now. So I think embracing that, understanding how you can use that tool to help your clients, I think is a really great thing.
Right. I'd add to that that we offer nuance, we offer framing, we offer context. As you've all said, we're able to ask our clients additional questions based on our own knowledge of a specific industry or a specific function, and can spin stories in a way that is much more specific and tailored or customized than ChatGPT could, at least for right now. And so, adding that human element, I don't think that right now is replaceable. And all of us have very strong writing skills, and we can bring we have a way with words in terms of how we put them together and how we can communicate a message in such a short, compact space that is of significant value that ChatGPT may not have those capabilities, at least at this point in time. And so there is a great value to continue to work with people like us. But for us, it is a wonderful tool that is an assistant. Maybe it's our new Siri as resume writers that can support us in certain ways. But I don't see it replacing us, at least in the near term.
I'll put two technical pieces to this. Number one, there's this thing called trust, and you have no idea what this thing can generate, number one. So how can you trust it? That's A, right? Mm-hmm. B, there's also this other problem with ChatGPTs, and it's actually this category, it's called large language models, but it's called the context window. And what's happening is the more conversations you have with it, like the first question, the second question, the fourth question, the 12th, well, by the time you get to the 12th question, the context window is kind of overloaded. And this is where it kind of goes a little off the rails. So again, just understand it's a tool and the tool can do some really good things, but trust, accuracy, it's not there. So don't assume you're talking to a person, you're talking to a sophisticated engine.
Saw the question about whether ChatGPT could help with applicant tracking software systems and helping a resume perform better on that. I have some thoughts, but does anyone want to answer? There we go. There's a question.
Well, there's, in reality, there's AI behind these resume systems today that's doing keyword searches. Okay, maybe ChatGPT can do it a little bit better, but this idea that it's picking up keywords, taking those keywords and matching it up to the job rec, that's not necessarily anything that's quote unquote new. Maybe it's going to be a little more sophisticated, but
I agree with that. And there was a lot of talk at the conference about how, if anything, ATS systems might get disrupted by ChatGPT because it looks for language. What do they call it? Like language patterns or language recognition patterns. And so the software was starting to look at that versus keywords.
But you know what's crazy? Like this is a little bit off topic, but still, I've talked to like a bunch of hiring leaders in tech, and I asked them, are you ever able to detect if a resume was written by ChatGPT or an actual person or a combination of those things? And they told me that that ship sailed a long time ago because apparently you can ask ChatGPT to write in a manner that would not be detected by most of the softwares that are supposed to detect that kind of language. And then I actually tried it. I tried like one of the like softwares that detects AI, and I put a like 100% ChatGPT generated text in it, and it told me it's unlikely that this text was written with the help of AI. So I think that ship sailed apparently. Yeah, it again, everything depends on the quality still, because even if the resume doesn't get through the ATS, let's say that ChatGPT does a really good job in like tilting those odds and your resume gets through the system, but then an actual human is going to need to talk to you. And if they look at your resume and they realize that this is complete, BS, and they don't like, they can see very clearly what you did there, like you're still not getting the outcome. So what was the point of getting through the ATS if you're not getting the phone call? It's like you're just wasting effort into thin air. But what you want is to get the job, right? You're not just competing for who gets through the ATS the first.
Yeah, there may be, I was thinking about that because recruiters may feel like, oh my gosh, so many of the resumes look the same with the same information. How do I know which one I want to bring in? And there may be some additional questions or specific questions that recruiters might use then to kind of sort through those resumes to actually put in maybe another layer to get to whether I want to even talk to these people, because then people have to justify or provide context around what they're writing.
It's funny you bring that up, Anna. I just read something last night, again, for this other presentation that I'm putting together, and those tools that can detect if GPT created it, I think, if memory serves me, it has about a 26% accuracy rate. I have to find the article. I was just reading it. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, there you go.
With the ATS, I mean, ATS is a filing system. There's no really passing it or not passing it. It's just a mechanism for filing. So to your point, George, I don't think that ChatGPT is any better than any of the other tools that are probably AI related somehow, that are identifying keywords and putting them in appropriate places to help with the filing.
Yeah,
remember, it's more important to write for humans.
And Virginia, I have every belief that all the vendors for the ATS systems are thinking about this and are getting a lot of feedback from their clients. And so they will be adding additional tools likely also for their clients to deal with, this situation.
I heard an analogy related to crime is in terms of trying to keep up with ChatGPT. And so as, criminals evolve, the justice system or police try to catch up to them, and they find a way to disrupt whatever they're currently doing, then criminals will evolve into a new way to commit their crimes and evade police. So I think we're in a similar situation where, there obviously is software that's used to help detect ChatGPT produce content, and it may be lagging a little bit right now, but it will eventually catch up. And so we're in a bit of an arms race, if you like, between ChatGPT and what it can do, and areas or realms in which we need to detect if the things are ChatGPT generated as gatekeepers of employment or what have you. And so we're going to be in this battle for a while. But right now, I think ChatGPT, as Anna was saying, it might have the edge.
I just laugh because I'm old enough to remember the days when antivirus first came in, and people were convinced that the antivirus companies were the ones creating the viruses so that they could sell their antivirus software. So it's like deja vu all over again. And here's a little, and again, I'll share with you something I'm working on, again, this presentation I'm working on for April 20th. But just to show you the complexity of this space, we've been talking about ChatGPT. I'm actually going to challenge all of you to think a little bit outside of the box. This calendar year, bear with me, this calendar year, here are all of the large language model announcements that have been made. OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, Google introduced Bard, Facebook introduced Llama, China has something called Moss, Baidu, a Chinese company, has ErnieBot, Anthropic has come out with Claude that they're going to open source, Stanford University has Alpaca, Together is coming up with one called Open Chat Kit. The United Kingdom has Brit GPT. Hello Dolly, this company is coming up. Databricks has something called Hello Dolly. And Elon Musk, based on losing control or the cost model for OpenAI, is talking about developing his model. So when we go back to this whole trust thing, who's sourcing it? Who's training it? How smart is it? What does it know about you? None of this has been figured out by any stretch of the imagination. So again, trust. It hasn't been established yet.
Can you speak to, George, that, was it the trough of disruption or trough of something?
So if you're in IT, there's two industry think tanks, as it were. One is called Gartner, the other is called Forrester. So Gartner's, I forget what it's called off the top of my head. I have to look it up. But one of the things is, hang on, I got it right here. I'm sorry. It's called the, give me a second. The hype cycle. I'm sorry. It's called the Gartner hype cycle. So the hype cycle always starts off with this slip. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Just look up Wikipedia hype cycle. But what happens is there's all this excitement when a new technology comes out. And the top of that first peak is called the peak of inflated expectations. That's the peak. And then once you get to the peak of inflated expectations, reality kicks in, and all of a sudden it all drops down to what they call the trough of disillusionment. And then, just so you don't have to look it up, then the next two phases are the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. So we haven't gotten to the trough of disillusionment quite yet. It's coming.
Sounds like Candyland.
Yeah, well, Chutes and Ladders, right? You go up the ladder.
There you go. So an employer can't use AI to determine authentic resumes. It sounds like they cannot with certainty. Is that right, Niato?
Well, I mean, before AI, could I lie on a resume? I mean, it would be easy enough to do without AI.
Yeah, I think it's more of a question. I mean, they can, but are they going to have good accuracy, and is it going to actually mean something? Because yeah, sure they can, but
there it is. Emma,
what's next?
I'm sorry, Emma put it into the chat. There's the Gartner hype cycle links for those. Thank you, Emma. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Jeremy. Oh, trust me, I've been working on this for about, I lost track, 6 months. I've been doing a webinar on all of this, and I'll tell you, my whole history has been keeping up with this stuff. I've never seen anything like this. This is off the rails crazy in terms of speed, content, examples, ideas, thought leaders. This is unique.
So I use Bing Chat, which I don't know which one that is. I guess it's Microsoft because it's off. Anyway, I used Bing Chat to find cheap airfare, and it was way faster than using it for regular. But what I liked about it is it had sources, but the level of questions and the drilling down piece that you could do on ChatGPT, I couldn't do with that, nor could I when I just got burned the other day, and I don't feel like it matches what you can do with GPT-4, certainly.
Well, here's the next thing. And again, this is a little off the rails, but there's this concept in AI that's called explainable AI. So let's just forget about ChatGPT for a second. One of the challenges with AI systems is that it's the proverbial black box. You ask it a question, magic happens in the box, and then an answer comes out. Well, getting back to trust, one of the things that researchers are working on is having these AI models be able to tell you, hey, how the hell did you get to this? How did you get to this answer? One of the things I like about what Bing does, and to your point, Virginia, is when you get the response back underneath it, it actually starts showing you the sources. Now, ChatGPT itself doesn't do this, but Bing does. It will actually, if you look at the bottom, will start showing you the sources that it used to at least create the answer. So it's not explainable AI, but at least it's a full disclosure. Hey, here's what influenced my answer.
No clue. For me.
I would say this, Stan. If you go back through time, the early days of the PC and Windows and all of that, they were productivity tools, and people got very used to productivity tools. But even though they were helping you to do things, there still required a level of understanding or knowledge. And if we go historically through time, and I'll, again, it's just part of a presentation I'm working on, believe it or not, Google became this thing that you abstracted the complexity of search. Apple's iPhone abstracted the complexity of a phone. Amazon Alexa reduced the complexity. Tesla with self-driving cars is trying to do this. So what's happening is we're getting to this moment of laziness, the ultimate of laziness, where we're abstracted from so much complexity that if we don't have to do it and something does it on our behalf, I think society tends to, I want more of that because it's easy. And I think that's really the root of it. We have been conditioned to abstract the complexity from these things. And I think that's why this is just turning out to be such an amazing platform that, again, people need to set their expectations on. But we've been conditioned really over the past 20 years to get to this point.
So, George, what do you think is the next iteration of this? Like, where do you see this going?
It's we don't have enough time. I'll say it to you this way. If I had to put a vision out, I'll give you two. There's more, but I'll give you three. I'm sorry, I'll give you three. I think the first one is customer service, the ability for somebody to have to not go through an IVR or press 1 to do this, 2 to do that, 3 to do this. The fact that they're going to be able to talk in their language and it's going to be understood, and you can get, so customer service contact centers are going to be disrupted, I think, first. I think the second one, from a technological perspective, since Microsoft has put about $10 billion into this, if you look at their Power Apps platform, me personally, they're going to start, because, oh, by the way, you may or may not know this, ChatGPT can generate source code. And it's doing this because it's connected to GitHub, and I won't go into the technical stuff. But what it can do is it can now build solutions. Well, you're going to see more of what's called a citizen developer. You're going to see more of that, not less than that. And then the third one was, the third one is going to be this quote unquote automation. I think, was it Shelley, or I forget, it was a Virginia that brought it up, about this idea that you're going to talk to ChatGPT and it's going to go out and be able to do some of those activities for you. That's going to be interesting, right? Where instead of you booking a flight, you're going to give it the constraints to go do something, and it's going to have the smart. So it's a new form of automation. Maybe those are, I would tell you, maybe the first three things I'd be looking at.
So I noticed that Virginia had to leave, and I know that others may be joining us. One question that I had is, what about these anti-ChatGPT things that are out there that can determine if something is not actually real, and there's a way to kind of combat that? Is that a real thing, George?
Well, this is the I mean, at the end of the day, it's are we talking about the Turing test? Like, is it a real or human? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, at some point in time, here's the secret sauce. The Turing test, if I'm not mistaken, is about a 20-minute test. I think it's about 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, or it has some duration. One of the biggest challenges with ChatGPT, we were talking about this a little earlier, continues to be that context window. So the deeper you get into it, the more lost and off the rails it can go. So the question is, it does, you know, if I were having a conversation with each of you, there's different things that I could potentially put into a question, where if I asked you question number 1, and I'm going to think, hey, maybe I'm going to ask Ken question number 10, and I want to see if he can relate question number 10 back to question number 1. To me, that's having a conversation with a sentient human being that's engaged and paying attention, other than a thing that you're talking to that may or may not be able to take the essence of those questions and extract that value. This is why, you know, they talk about this idea of us being sentient versus these machines that are basically taking keywords, but can they take a relationship 5, 10, 15 minutes into the conversation and tie it all the way back to a point? That remains to be seen. So
Interesting.
So,
So,
I make these things up as I go, Ken.
I mean, what I wonder about is, you know, if someone needs help with a resume or something, they can get an idea for an elevator pitch or a summary statement there, but then they have to personalize what's there instead of having it being written for them. And I think that's a bit of the disconnect. A lot of people assume that ChatGPT can do everything for them.
Yeah, it's not a good assumption.
But that's a lot of what's getting out there now.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, and then it's like anything else, right? You know, it's like, hey, that stove's hot, don't touch it. And all of a sudden you touch it for yourself. Like, hey, wait a minute, I burned myself. I'm not going to do that again. So again, this gets us back to the trough of disillusionment. We haven't hit it yet. So until you hit that, you know, there's been no counterbalance to this. Oh my God, I mean, read the press. ChatGPT is going to take over the world. What are we going to do? I mean, they're talking about Armageddon in a sense. And it's like, guys, wait, stop. Stop.
So am I as much of a junkie about this as you guys are, Anna and Shelley? I mean, I love learning about this, and I guess to some extent it helps me understand the processes. But has this really started to take hold for you guys as well?
Well, I can tell you, Ken, because I was with Virginia at that conference. Everybody was talking about it. It was the main topic because I would say there probably were a group of people that were very fearful of it. And there was a group of people that were like, this is the most awesome thing that has ever happened. So I think, you know, a lot of people kind of fall into either camp or probably there's some in the middle there too, who are kind of just a wait and see on it. But, you know, my thought is I think it's great for job seekers in that I see so many that don't really understand how to format a resume, what content to put on there, what questions they might be asked. And so this is a readily available, inexpensive way to help them with their job search. It's not the end and be all of it, but I think for many, it will really help them to understand better how to present themselves and to be more competitive.
And this is here, what are the most clever prompts or clarifications that have been successful for you? So these are just some examples.
Well, actually, I've experimented a little bit. That's going back to the context of interview prep for a moment. And I found that for a lot of people, the one thing that they want to know before they interview is the questions that are going to get asked. And not just like the usual tell me about yourself question, but something more specific. And usually the behavioral or the situational questions, that's what throws job seekers off. And so I've been experimenting. And if you simply use prompts like which questions will I get in this interview, or which questions should I prepare for, it will simply give you like a very generic list that's not super helpful. But if you insert the specific job description and if you ask ChatGPT, pretend that you are a professional recruiter interviewing candidates for this job, which questions would you ask? So when you spin it and give ChatGPT some ideas of like, hey, I'm actually looking for more in-depth and quality stuff, that's when the output changes tremendously. And then I got some really great questions that I myself, if I were recruiting for that particular position, those would be the questions I would be looking for more or less. So asking ChatGPT to imagine you are this, or to ask it to take on a role of the decision maker or the actual person with a certain competencies or like a set of skills and qualities, that is something that is game changing.
Yeah,
I have found the same thing. Yes.
Oh.
And what I did also was prompted, what would be some more challenging questions for the interviewee to be asked? And it gave some really interesting questions. So I thought that was also helpful because it could help prepare somebody for not the easy questions, but the harder questions that sometimes they stumble upon.
Right. Based on Anna's example, the analogy of a screenplay came to my mind because you put ChatGPT in the shoes of a professional recruiter who's going to be asking very specific questions about a specific role. And if we think about the idea of a screenplay for a movie, the directions are really explicit in terms of how the character is sitting, what they're thinking or feeling, the lighting, the whole scene is written in very explicit detail, which allows the actors, the directors, and everyone involved to create what we ultimately end up seeing on the screen. And so for us as users of ChatGPT, if we're able to think, I'm not a screenwriter, but the more specific we can get with the prompts, the questions, and all of that, and setting a scene within which we want ChatGPT to play out this conversation with us, the better results that we're going to get. And so what I wanted to add to the conversation thus far in terms of how to use ChatGPT, I think it can be a wonderful exploration partner. Help me learn more about, I'll go back to that wearable tech. I want to know about the wearable tech industry. What are the latest innovations? Where's the industry going? What roles are in this industry? You can allow ChatGPT to help you explore and understand more about something that you don't know much about or want to know more about. And then when it comes to materials production, I would just caveat that we can't forget about the uniqueness of our own story. And so for all of us here who are resume writers and career coaches, we're always emphasizing how unique each one of our clients are or is in order for them to run in their own lane and be their own candidate. And so you can never forget that aspect of the uniqueness of your story. That's where the true value comes in. So ChatGPT can help you figure out, what do I talk about? And then you put in your own unique story into that narrative that maybe ChatGPT helped you come up with. And that can be a way to partner and a way to stand out from others by having the support you need. But again, your story is what's going to sell you, what's going to help you get the job, is your unique value.
And Nye, the one thing I would add to what you just said, and this is kind of part two, is if you don't, how do I say this? You have to be yourself, because remember, there's AI that's out there that is watching you. You could actually look at the camera and it's watching your body language. So if you're not projecting your true self, Nye provides the first part of this that says, here's my story, here's my script, here's my narrative. But if you don't project that confidence, those AI windows he drooped his shoulders, nodded his head. It was all the negative things, which would negate all of that good work. So again, it's a tool. You're building out your presence, and don't forget that AI is just a small piece of, each step of that process.
Can I add something? And I don't think we've really talked about it that much in the with ChatGPT, but for people who are in a career but would like to do something differently, maybe they don't feel that the work really aligns with what they want to do or their skills. I think ChatGPT can be really nice tool to help brainstorm other options for them. Because if you can put in specifically the skills you would like to use, your strengths, that sort of thing, it can help you to find different types of careers that you can then use for exploration, informational interviews, that sort of thing, that can really help you better align your career to maybe things that would be more of interest to you. So I think that's an important part that I think we should also focus on here.
This is from ChatGPT, a summary of the steps to make your job search like a project. And this is apparently what Michael put into ChatGPT. So I find that very interesting. And I think that this is a case of ChatGPT really being able to help organize and things. And it gives you the steps. I mean, it can't tell you more specifically. So I think that's a really great learning tool when you have a question like that, to ask something like that of ChatGPT to help you, and then maybe work with someone who's more specific and has a better understanding.
Yeah, 100%. And to Shelley's point, I found that if you're transitioning to a different industry or a career, ChatGPT can be awesome because, first of all, it helps you brainstorm some of those directions that you may not have even thought of, like you didn't even occur to you to explore them. That's one thing. And then if you do get interested in something new and you have no idea how to link your previous experience to this new direction, you can ask ChatGPT to help you identify transferable skills. I mean, first you need to know what those are, but if you do ask it that, it actually does a really great job. Again, I would caution people for the truth versus lie part, but other than that, it really gives you the right direction or the right way to think about your previous background and make it more relevant to this new area that you're currently exploring. And I find that a lot of people struggle to understand that on their own. And I'm not saying that ChatGPT does like 100% job on that, but if you're like only on the verge of exploring and you're just scared of and you think that what you've done in the past has no relevance whatsoever to this new path or a new career, this is the tool. Like it can give you some really great ideas to think about.
I mean, I look at this way. I remember a time, and many of us do, pre-internet, and I remember things when you actually had to use a roadmap to go to places, and you had to look up stuff in a book. And now you went on the internet, and all of a sudden things with the snap of your fingers using GPS. And the first reaction might have been, "Oh my God, what is this?" But then you get comfortable with it. And so this can become to some extent what that is. I mean, I've become more comfortable with it, but there's that first initial like, oh my God, what is this? Is this good or is this bad?
This is for those that have an Alexa at home, this is no different. It's just Alexa on steroids.
Right. Absolutely.
And I would tell everybody, just as a next step, if you haven't done this yet, you want to register at 3 sites. Go to the OpenAI site and get your OpenAI user ID so you can play with ChatGPT. The Bing browser is one. It's Microsoft's browser because now you got to get on the waiting list to get enabled, but it's the same thing, kind of, more or less. It's for search, and you can actually get a GPT, and then Google Bard. And again, you've got to experiment with these. And here's another little tidbit. You're going to see on LinkedIn a lot of people saying, here's what I did. Here's the guide. Here's the this. Here's the that. What you do not want to do is mimic what they're doing. You really need to think about it. So if I'm training you on a couple of keywords or key phrases, you're memorizing it. What I really encourage you to do is explore these environments. Try anything. Use these as examples, but you want to explore, not mimic.
You bring up a good point about Alexa, because I think we take for granted a lot of the technology and so much of what we do is voice activated anyway. You know, whether I'm on my phone and I'm doing a voice to text. I mean, and it's a machine that's actually reading what I have to say. But I want to thank you guys all very, very much today. Sorry about some of the distractions. Try very hard not to be too much of an annoyance in the group. Do you guys have anything else you want to share or add before we end the call? Because I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
I think we're good.
No, we're good. So thank you very much, guys. Now, before I forget, is it Ni or is it Nai? Because I want to get this right.
Oh, sure. So actually, Niatu is my full first name. It's like a compound first name. So
I want to make sure of that because I'm sorry if I miss.
No worries at all. I have the pronunciation feature on my LinkedIn page, the little icon.
A very good reminder for me to do that next time instead of asking here.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
Well, there's an old expression, Ken. Call me anything you want, just don't call me late for dinner.
All right. Well, if you guys, hopefully you watched the recording. If you missed it, if you have any questions, reach out to my expert panel. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Ken, for
Bye.
hosting us.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye.